Welcome to Failing Up, a limited series from the shallow end about our collecting failures, how they impact us, and ultimately help us be better collectors. It's about the moments we need, even if we don't necessarily want them. I'm Dave, and I wanted to do this series to help us all feel a little less alone in this hobby. We've all made mistakes. Nobody is perfect, and maybe we can learn from each other. On today's episode, we welcome Jeff, my favorite cardboard on Instagram and part of two wonderful shows, Blabbin' About Slabbin' and Spitballin' Cards. I really appreciated Jeff's willingness to share some of his stories because he's such a good storyteller, but also because they're just so relatable. This is an episode about the persistence of hope, even when there is none. And a reminder that sometimes the worst wounds are self-inflicted. Happy now to welcome into the show Jeff, who is my favorite cardboard on Instagram. He's part of the Blabbin' About Slabbin' podcast. He is part of the Spitballin' Cards podcast. Jeff, welcome. Please, if you would, tell us about a mistake from your collecting past.
Well, thanks for having me, and it's always good to reflect on these mistakes that we've made. It can be a little traumatic, but it's a good reminder of some of the things that we've learned in the hobby. So I appreciate you giving me the chance to do that. The first thing I wanted to talk about was buying a card at the very peak of the hype cycle. And when I first got back into the hobby, like 2017, 2018, I was still learning a lot about how the new card economy worked. And it was autographs and short prints and all these new sets. And eventually it became popular, and you might remember this, that base cards started to have their day in the sun. Like 2020, 2021, base cards seemed to be really popular, and you could grade them and then sell them at like 5x, and it was this crazy machine that kept going. Well, one of the rare sets, or one of the sets that was more scarce around those times, was Top Sapphire, and it was really more of a high end parallel for Topps Chrome. And 2018 was a big year for Top Sapphire, and you had Cunha rookie and Otani rookies, and it was a pretty short printed set. And then 2019 came, and I didn't really know at the time how much the print run was increased in 2019, and even into 2020 when the market started to go up, I wasn't too aware of that. But Juan Soto, who was one of my favorite players at the time, just coming off a world championship in 2019, he didn't have a rookie. He was one of the few in that 2018 rookie class that didn't have a rookie. So his first Sapphire card was a Gold Cup, and in 2019. So I loved this card, and the market started to go crazy. And I thought, well, I've got to get this card because he doesn't have a rookie. It's going to be his de facto Sapphire rookie. Sapphire is going to be the card that everybody's going to want. And so at the very peak of the market, I decided I had to buy it. And I went on My Slabs at the time and bought it on My Slabs for $1,250. And it was like an impulse purchase, by far the most expensive card I had purchased to that point. But I was convinced that it was going to double, triple as time went on. And almost immediately after I bought it, it was a little bit steady, and then it started to decline rapidly. And I watched as more and more of these cards gemmed. I think the pop now is like 260, which is even more than the entire print run of the previous Sapphire sets. And the price just kept going down, and I was convinced that it was going to bounce back. So I didn't want to give up on it. I thought if I would sell it when it was $600 or $800, that I'd be taking that loss and I would regret it. I rode it all the way to the bottom. It's the latest sale on this card was $70, $70 US.
In terms of riding it to the bottom, was it because, well, I'm in this far now and I might as well just keep it, or was there any glimmer of hope that it might rebound?
I'd say a little bit of both, and probably because I was had so much money invested in that. Was just like I said, more than I had spent on a card. I couldn't stomach the idea of losing that much money on it. So maybe it was some false hope, but it was definitely some hope that it was going to go back up and that it was going to see the same gains as some of the rookie cards from the 2018 and previous Sapphire sets we're gonna see. But that didn't happen.
And now you still own the card. You just showed it. It's a beautiful
Yes.
card.
It's
It
a
really
beautiful
is.
card, isn't it? Yeah.
When you look at it, when you hold it, when you think about it, do you admire the beauty or do you think about the money that's into it?
I'd have to say both. And it's gotten to the point where I'm back. It's almost went full circle. I'm almost back to being able to just enjoy the card for the card. That money's gone. There have been a lot of purchases that I've made since then where it's made up for it. So I don't feel quite as bad about losing that money on that specific card. I still love the card, but it also is a really good reminder for me not to buy at the peak, at the hype, whether it's a player hype or a set hype. It's so hard to do. And especially if there's a guy you really like I'm a big Jackson Churio fan, and it took me a long time to buy any of his cards because I just didn't want to buy at the peak of the hype again and wanted to wait until things settled down a little bit more.
And part of that is you don't know when the peak is going to be.
Yes.
But a part of it is that you know that there are certain cycles that happen. So some of it you can learn from that. Have there been moments, you mentioned Cheerio, have there been other moments over the last several years since the Soto incident, for lack of better words, where you could sense that you were about to buy something at the wrong moment and then pump the brakes and were able to back off?
Yeah. And I'd say Churio for me was a good example of that. I learned that even if, like you said, you don't know when the peak of the hype cycle is going to be, but almost 95% of the time, if not more, a better time to buy these players is in the off season. And that's really hard to do because when you're in the midst of the season, there's all the excitement. You're getting the FOMO because you see the players successful. But for at least in that case, I was able to step back. I waited until the off season for the majority of the Churio pickups I made. And obviously, he was still a pretty hyped player in the off season, but I feel like I at least had a little bit of restraint, and that's partially because of what happened with the Soto card.
And that's great because it's so hard when you're not just investing in cards, but there's also the emotional tie to it. You being a Brewers fan and this Churio, yes. Or a few years ago when the Bucks won, and you're a Giannis fan.
Yes,
there's like this Venn diagram of fandom and common sense and knowing what you should or should not be doing. But sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's hard to back off. And sometimes you don't want to back off. Sometimes you just want the card, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And because you personally are investing so much of your emotional well-being in watching these sports and these players. So you feel like, you feel invested in that way. So sometimes it's hard to not buy the players, and maybe you want to. A similar mistake, which I've also learned from, was I bought a lot of Keston Hiura cards because I was a huge fan when he got drafted by the Brewers and came up, and that was a huge lesson for me in prospecting. And since then, I've stayed out of prospecting. And yes, maybe it costs more once you wait till players are established to buy their cards. And that definitely happened with me with a guy like Ohtani. I was not going to buy him early on, not even after his first surgery. And so it did cost me because I got his cards later. But that was another lesson I learned, that goes along with the hype, buying into the prospects before they've really established themselves. And then you see comparatively what some of the prices of these all-time greats or guys that are on Hall of Fame trajectory are going for. And it's hard to rationalize.
And I think what you're saying, a lot of us have experienced as well. A lot of us have felt the same thing as you were talking about Keston Hiura. I was flashing back 2 years ago to Jordan Walker, yes, the next great Cardinal prospect, of which I have one card left. I finally just decided to cut
Good
my
for
losses
you.
on that.
That's impressive. Yeah.
But I'm going to feel silly in 20 years when he's being inducted into Cooperstown. For now, I think I may have made the right move. So you also have another card that you were going to talk about and to show as well. So what is that one?
I do want to talk about another mistake I made. And I bought a card raw off of eBay. and it was a pretty expensive card. Again, it was just over $1,000, which subsequently I've learned not to buy raw cards off of eBay. But in this case, I did. I bought it, and when I got it in hand, there was some damage on the back, and it wasn't apparent in the pictures on when I bought it, and it looked like somebody had opened a can of soda and little droplets spilled out, and there were dozens of these little droplets on there, and I'll show you in a second. So I emailed the guy and I said, listen, I love this card. I've really wanted it. It's a hard card to find. This back is really bad. Is there anything we can do? Like, I was willing to take it if he was going to would give me a discount. And he responded that the card was exactly like how he got it. So there was no discount involved. So then I had to decide, well, do I send it back and get my full refund and not have the card, or do I keep the card? And I thought, well, it looks like this stuff went onto the card. So maybe I can get it off. Maybe I can wipe it off. So I tried that. I got my microfiber and even a Q-tip, and was trying to get these little droplets off, almost like a syrup or something, tiny droplets. And it was working. And I thought, maybe I can get these off. I can still salvage this card. It can be brought back to its former glory. But then I rubbed it too hard, and some of the cardboard rubbed off. And I was furious with myself because this is a really expensive card, and now I was damaging it. I should have just sent it back and got my money back, but I didn't. And I decided I could either sell it damaged like the guy did before me and let some other poor sucker take it, or get it slabbed authentic, which I did, and keep it for the PC. So here's the card. Same player. It's a Juan Soto Heritage Red Ink. And I was just furious with myself, but there's nothing I can do at that time. Nothing I can do. So I learned my lesson that I can't. Two things. One, if I get a card and it's not in the condition it was promised, just send it back. Another card will come up. And if another card doesn't come up, it wasn't meant to be anyway. And two, don't mess with a card. So I learned two important lessons. Very expensive lessons on this. Yeah.
And so the red ink heritage autos, especially for rookies like such as this one with Juan Soto, just a beautiful card. It just a wonderful image. It really captures his youth. I can understand the sinking feeling that you had. I tried to crack a card out of the case once, and slab once, which I had done many times, and biffed it and wrecked a card. But it was maybe a $35 to $40 card, but it still still eats at me talking about it right now.
Feeling, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Done it to yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. So from this, so if you got this now and this came to you now, would you just sort of activate the refund, like the eBay refund type thing, or what?
Yes, absolutely. But I do have to say that I bet I would not have gotten the card because it would have had to pass the authentication process. Mm-hmm. And there's no way that they would have passed it with all that stuff on the back. So at that point, and this has happened to me before, we crap on eBay and PSA for a lot of their decisions, but the authentication process has helped me before. And sometimes if it's not the condition that they promised, they'll send you a note that says, this is not a near mint card. Here's what we saw. There's damage. Do you still want to take the purchase, or do you want to send it back? And they give you the opportunity at that time. So I feel like if that process had been in place, I wouldn't have even had to make this decision. But given, even if I do, or if I buy a card not on eBay that doesn't have the authenticity guarantee, doesn't have that, I would send it back because I just wouldn't be happy with it. And I would think about it, and I'd know well enough to leave alone now.
It sounds like a common thread between these two, between buying at the peak and now knowing not to buy at the peak, and trying to fix it yourself versus trying to go through sort of official channels. The common thread between them is just the wisdom that comes with experience, right? Like now you know, but if you had not gone through that, who knows what other mistakes you might have made.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I feel like that's kind of the thread of all of the failures that I've had since in the eight plus years since I've been back in. They're things I've had to go through myself. And people warn other people, and you can tell people about the dangers of breaking or buying cards or not buying at the peak. But it's something harder to quantify unless you feel it for yourself. So yeah, I think there's something to that it's these experiences, and they have stuck with me. They have stuck with me for these years now, as the cards have, and as reminders, just to um, continue to think about things when I'm going to make a purchase, or when I'm looking at buying a card or making a trade. Think about all the decisions I've made before to lead up to that.
So as we start to wind down here, hearing your mistakes, thinking about my own mistakes, and everyone's making their mistakes, it makes me think about the way things are positioned and represented on social, which is where a lot of us see other people's collections. And it's always so perfect and so positive for the most part, except for the scandals, which of course is something else, right?
Right.
But it seems to me like it would be really helpful if there was some sort of a repository of just, sports card fails or self-inflicted wounds of some sort. Wouldn't you think? Where we could just realize that, oh, like, we're not alone, right? These are things that we're all doing, and it's a natural part of the process.
Yes, you're absolutely right. The feeling of not being alone is really comforting, and especially when you're talking about mistakes or errors that you make in the hobby. You're right. We see typically the positive things. We see people that open the boxes and get the huge breaks. We don't necessarily see someone that spent $1,000 on a box and got $50 worth of cards. So we don't see a lot of that. And I don't even want to say it's negative stuff, because it's real. It's just part of the collecting process. It's part of the hobby. So I don't look at it as just a positive versus negative thing. So Chris and I, who's my partner on Blabbing About Slabbing, we try to talk about our mistakes, and we make videos where we talk about the bad decisions we've made in grading or buying cards or making mistakes. And you're right, more than a lot of our videos, we get people in the comments saying, "Oh, I've done this," or they talk about something that they've done. So yeah, I think it is helpful to talk about it. So I'm really glad that you're doing this series and inviting me to be part of it.
And I know in having conversations with others in this space about the content that we consume, that over the last couple of years, as you and Chris have grown Blabbing About Slabbing, one of the comments people have said, just sort of just as we're just chatting, nothing official, is like they're real, right? They're just real collectors who are just sort of silly, and they're trying new things, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, but they're always really open. And I think that is reflective in the audience that you've grown. So congratulations on that. If you're listening to this, check out Blabbing About Slabbing, check out Spitballing Cards, and give, if you're not already, Jeff a follow at My Favorite Cardboard. Jeff, thank you for sharing your stories with us today.
Thanks so much for having me. And yeah, we do a live show every Thursday on YouTube. So if anybody has stories to tell, and this is a great idea, maybe after you release your series, we can do an episode where we just invite people to come on and tell about their fails, so we can all feel part of it.
That'd be great. Thanks, Jeff. Take care.
All right, thanks so much. Bye-bye.